friends, myself Shoptaporni from BioLife. Today we will learn about pancreas. This video is in continuation with my previous video on hormone. You may check out that video too. The link is in the description box below. So let's begin. Pancreas is a major endocrine organ of our body. It is situated just behind the stomach in the upper left portion of the abdomen. See here, the yellow organ is pancreas, which is situated behind the stomach, and it is also associated with spleen, duodenum, gallbladder and liver. This is an elaborative image of pancreas. The pancreas consists of main three parts: a large head, an expanded body and a tapering tail. The head is situated in the notch of duodenum. You can see the pancreas consists of two main ducts. The main pancreatic duct or duct of Wirsung and an accessory pancreatic duct or duct of Santorini. The accessory pancreatic duct open into the duodenum by minor duodenal papilla, whereas the major pancreatic duct opens into the duodenum by major duodenal papilla. The main pancreatic duct also receives a common bile duct which carries the bile from the gallbladder and the hepatic secretion from the liver. Pancreas is an endo-exocrine gland of our body. That means it functions both as an endocrine gland as well as an exocrine gland. The exocrine portion mainly occupies most part of the gland, whereas the endocrine portions are sparsely scattered in between the exocrine portion. See here, it is a cross section of our pancreas. You can see some balloon-like structures here. These are called acini, or in singular acinus. Every acinus is associated with a duct system. These are the exocrine portion of our gland or of our pancreas because they contain ducts. And you can see that most part of the pancreas is filled with those acini. And the endocrine portion is just scattered here and there. See here is one and here is one. And there are some blood vessels, the red ones. So the exocrine portion of the pancreas is made up of numerous acinus. See here, the balloon-like structures are called acinus, which bear duct system, and through those ducts pancreatic juice, pancreatic enzymes are directly poured into the duodenum for digestion. See, this is an elaborative view of our exocrine pancreas. The exocrine pancreas consists of acinus. Each acinus is composed of several large acinar cells. Each acinar cell has a blue colored nucleus and several pink dots representing the zymogen granules inside which the pancreatic enzymes are stored. When these pancreatic enzymes are secreted into the duct, they are directly carried to the duodenum for the purpose of digestion through these ducts. Now, the ductless endocrine portion is scattered throughout the pancreas like small islands. That is why they are known as islets of Langerhans. See here, it is an islet of Langerhans and one is here. This is an elaborative view of an islet of Langerhans. You can see that there are major three types of cell in our islet. The red one are peripherally situated and they are known as alpha cells. The blue one are centrally situated and they are known as beta cells. And the green one are sparsely situated and they are known as delta cells. You can also find some minor cells like PP cells and blood vessels inside the islet. Now, the main function of the major cells is secretion of hormone. The alpha cell secretes glucagon, beta cell secretes insulin and the delta cell secretes somatostatin hormone. Now coming to the insulin. We have already learned that insulin is secreted from the beta cells of the islet of Langerhans. the main function of insulin is to decrease the blood glucose or blood sugar level, and it is executed by two principal ways. Firstly, insulin promotes the absorption of excess glucose from the bloodstream so that our body cells can utilize that glucose as fuel and produce energy, and thus it lowers the blood glucose level. See here, the red colored blood vessel contains several or excess amount of glucose molecules, the white dots. As the glucose molecules are excess in the bloodstream, under the influence of insulin, the glucose molecules are uptaken or absorbed by the adjacent cells, and thus the blood glucose level is lowered. Secondly, insulin enables liver and muscle cells to absorb excess glucose like other cells of the body, but in the liver and muscle cells, the absorbed excess glucose is converted to glycogen. Glycogen is a storage form of glucose in our body. Now a question may arise, what is the function of storing glucose as glycogen in our body? What is its function? See, when we starve, there is no external source of glucose in our body, but our cells need glucose as a fuel to produce energy 24/7 hours. But when we starve, from where will this glucose come? So at that situation, our liver converts that stored glycogen into glucose, and that glucose is mixed up with blood, and then our body cells absorb glucose from the blood and carry on their normal functioning. So storing glycogen is very important for our body. Now we have learned that hypo or hypersecretion of any hormone is dangerous for our body. So the under-secretion of insulin is also dangerous for our body. As we know, the main function of insulin is to absorb excess blood glucose into the body cells. So when there is an under-secretion of insulin, what will happen? Obviously, there will be less uptake of glucose from blood to the cells, and as a result, blood will contain more glucose than the normal level, and this condition is known as hyperglycemia. Hyper means excess, glyc means sugar, and emia means blood. That means when our blood contains high amount of glucose than the normal range. Now this glucose containing blood goes to the nephron, but nephron cannot reabsorb whole glucose from the blood. As a result, glucose is passed into our urine, which is an unusual condition, and this disease condition is known as diabetes mellitus. Diabetes means excretion of excessive amount of water as urine, and mellitus means honey. That means when our urine contains glucose. That condition is known as diabetes mellitus. So what are the symptoms of diabetic persons, or how a diabetic person suffers? See, obviously there is a high concentration of glucose in the blood as insulin is under-secreted or hyposecreted, and as a result the person excretes a large amount of urine loaded with sugar. As there is a loss of huge amount of water through urination, diabetic person feels thirsty. As our cells are deprived of glucose, gradually we start losing weight, and the person becomes weaker and weaker. In certain cases, eyesight can also be lost because the blood vessels carries excess amount of glucose. Now coming to the treatment of diabetes mellitus. See, injecting insulin into our blood is not a cure, but it is a method of supplying that insulin which is not normally produced by our body when we are diabetic. But have you ever noticed that insulin is always directly injected into our blood but not taken orally? Why? Because insulin is digestible. If you intake it orally, it will get digested by your gastric enzymes and gastric acids, and it will not be effective in our body. That is why insulin is always injected directly into your blood at its site of action so that it don't get digested. Now, as under-secretion of insulin, over-secretion of insulin also causes some serious problems. See, hypersecretion of insulin causes high rate of glucose absorption from blood. As a result, blood sugar level gets low, and that condition is known as hypoglycemia. That means when our blood carries less amount of glucose than the normal level. But if the glucose level becomes too much low in the blood, then glucose cannot reach the brain cells. As a result, our brain may enter a state of coma. A similar condition may also happen if an overdose of insulin is given to a diabetic patient. Then patient becomes unconscious, and that condition is known as insulin shock. A prompt bite of sweet candy or biscuit will help to overcome this situation. Now, the second hormone secreted from the pancreas is glucagon, which is secreted by the alpha cells of the islet of Langerhans. The main function of glucagon is to increase the blood sugar level. That is exactly opposite to the insulin. How does it occur? Glucagon stimulates the breakdown of glycogen in liver and converts the glycogen into glucose. Then that glucose gets mixed up into our blood, and thus the blood sugar level gets increased. Now the third hormone is somatostatin, which is secreted from the delta cells of our islet of Langerhans. The main function of somatostatin is the inhibition of secretion of both insulin and glucagon. See here, somatostatin is inhibiting insulin as well as glucagon, and these black signs are depicting the inhibition sign. See. Now, an important topic is the role of pancreatic hormones, mainly insulin and glucagon, in regulation of blood sugar level. See, when we intake some food, our blood sugar level increases. The increased blood sugar level then stimulates our beta cells to secrete insulin. Insulin then stimulates our cells to absorb glucose, excess amount of glucose from the bloodstream. And then either cells may utilize those glucose as fuel to produce energy, or the muscle and liver cell can convert that absorbed glucose into glycogen, a storage form of glucose in our body. And thus, in this both way, blood glucose level gets decreased, and thus the homeostasis is restored. On the other hand, if there is a decrease in the blood sugar level, the alpha cells are stimulated to secrete glucagon. Glucagon then stimulates glycogen breakdown into glucose in our liver. Then that glucose gets mixed up into our blood, and thus the blood glucose level gets increased. So, this is the overall presentation of how our blood glucose level is maintained by the insulin and glucagon. See, when our blood glucose level is high, we need to decrease it. And how we will decrease it? By stimulating the beta cells to secrete insulin. Insulin then stimulates our body cells to absorb excess amount of blood glucose, and muscle and liver cells to convert that glucose into glycogen, and thus the blood glucose level is lowered. On the other hand, when our blood glucose level is low, the alpha cells are stimulated to secrete glucagon. Glucagon then stimulates glycogen breakdown into glucose, and that glucose gets mixed up into our blood, and thus our blood glucose level is raised. So with this we come to an end of today's lesson. We will continue this chapter in our next video. To stay updated, please like, share and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Happy learning!